Hello and welcome to Walk With Me, the podcast. I am your host, Bédard, and today I'll invite you to embark on the journey that is as simple as it is profound, the act of walking together. Now, the name Walk With Me is intentional, me is my initials, Marie, but it also stands for me as in each one of us. So this podcast is a place where I want us to explore life, death, everything in between and beyond. Over the years, I've witnessed that growth and evolution can be daunting for a lot of people, but when we get out of our heads and walk the path together, something truly magical happens. We collapse time, we tap into our inner wisdom, and unlock amazing potentialities. So this journey is not just about walking. It's more than just putting one foot in front of the other. It's about exploration. It's about the deep connections we form with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us as we move through life. So together, we'll dive into the discoveries of science, the teachings of the heart, and the revelations of the soul. From the frequency of the Black Forest and Journey where I live, I'll be added some sacred feminine wisdom and collective consciousness. We'll explore how everything shapes our lives and our path. So lace up your shoes and let's walk together on this path of growth and evolution. Hello and welcome to this new episode of Walk With Me. I'm your host, Marie Bédard, and I'm so excited to be coming here today to share what I have to share today because it's a really important and recurring conversation that I have with, people around me, with my clients. Like, no matter what, level of growth and evolution and awareness they're at, it's always a good conversation to come back to and to anchor in and to remind ourselves. Now, I have recently been, leading a container, and in the container we were talking about like different things, and I actually dropped a message that it's a recorded message that I have in Telegram that I recorded several months ago, and I keep on putting it, like resharing it because there was a need to have this conversation, and I thought, okay, so this is where, it would be a good thing to record a podcast episode on the subject, to really like put it out there and to really have something that anybody that wants to tap into, that wants to revisit this episode can do that without going into any of my containers. It just is there for your listening pleasure. So in that container, I was, re-explaining how our way of being and on a day-to-day living is sabotaging our willpower all the time. How the fact that we are constantly living and, pushing through from a state of survival, from a fight, flight, avoidance, or freeze place, we have constantly sabotaged our willpower and our ability to take decisions from a place of clarity, from a place of calm. So I was dropping this in the container, and a few of the ladies in there, the wonderful women in there, and specifically one said like, oh my God, I just am realizing that I have been operating and I have been living in this constant state of survivor and chronic stress my entire life. And, we went from there in the coaching and to really help her move to the next step. But like at the same time, like what I was telling her is like, you are not alone in this, because this is what I have been noticing around me. And, this is why I think that it's really important that we understand the neurobiology behind this. So I started to dive back in 2003. So it's been over 20 years that I started to dive. And I don't remember ever like thinking about my breath before going on the water and breathing from an apparatus, which is kind of interesting because like I'm sure that I do have memories somewhere in my mind where I could have examples from those period of times before 2003, but it's just that all the example that I have are the ones that I've lived and the ones that I led other women through while I was teaching eccentrics, while I was teaching scuba diving, while I was like coaching in many spaces, in the conversation with my friends, with my family, in the accompanying people like at the end of life or going to the hospital or like all of that. It's a recurring conversation. And I have like thousands of examples literally that I could bring forward and list for you to like really, but I don't have to, because I know that as I'm going to move through this, you're going to really understand and see where I'm coming from and what I am bringing to the table here, which is really, really important. So you've probably heard that our, internal neurobiology is wired for protection, is wired to, resist change, is wired to maintain status quo, right? And anytime that there's an external threat, whether it's a real threat, like I am encountering, wild boars or a bear in the wood, or it's a real threat or an imagined threat where like the consequences of something that we're having in our mind, the mind doesn't make the difference between, a real threat and an imagined threat, and God knows that our imagination can really run wild, and it actually is very good at creating, scenarios that are end of the world scenarios, like really out there. And that's another thing that I always like invite people when we're creating a lot of like worst case scenarios. I always say, well, there's this much probability as well as good scenarios. So let's envision all of the scenarios so we can really sit within that and see that, we can take a step back in what our mind creates and how we can really course correct in using the imagination for envisioning something positive, something better, something that actually will pull us through instead of maintain us in a fight or flight or avoidance or freeze, states. And so what happens is we have a part of the brain. So very quickly, we have a part of the brain that is called the amygdala, and that is basically our alarm system. So when there's a threat that is detected by our amygdala, it triggers a whole bunch of cascade of events in our body, especially hormonal, that will fire us up so we can actually like get into either fight specifically or flight, basically like just run away, and those two ones are the ones that come to the forefront the most. Avoidance is another one, and freeze is a particular one that we can come back and circle back at another time. But like the fight and the flight, two behaviors that we have are the one that are most put on the forefront. So it actually elevates our heart rate, it elevates our breathing rate, it also taps into our energy sources, so fat and sugar that is stored in our body, to really bring everything online to support our muscles, whether we need to fight or to flight, So there's a whole cascade of events that is happening in our body that supports those survival behavior. All right. Now, one of the things that happens is this is the autonomic system that actually goes online and just fires up everything and gets us ready for battle. Now, in most situations in life, we wouldn't want necessarily to, move from that place because, one, most of the time it's not a real threat, right? So it impairs our ability to take sound decisions, to have clarity, to, tap into our willpower and move in a direction that we want to move because we are in survival state. Okay. So the other set of behavior that we have, it's called the pause and plan. So this is actually like, it's basically the opposite, but it's meant to protect us from internal threat. So this is really an interesting thing because like we always think about the external threat, like in the fact that we need to protect ourselves from the exterior world, from other people, from events, from situations that are external to us. But we rarely think about, that inside of ourselves that also is an internal threat, because if I am taking decisions that are not aligned with clarity, with alignment, with my willpower to lead me in the direction that I want to work towards from a calm state of mind, from a place that is grounded, then the body actually has developed something to protect us from ourselves. So it's called a pause and plan. And that is actually happening where, the whole cascade of hormonals and behaviors that are happening in our bodies is the contrary. So we have, decrease of breathing, the heart rate slows down, the blood pressure actually stays the same as opposed to the fight or flight, which activates the blood pressure. And the other thing that happens is that pause and plan, because we want to be taking decisions from a place of clarity and alignment and a willpower, the prefrontal cortex, so the part of the brain that is actually like really used to or meant to help us make sound decisions, is really increased, as opposed to when we are in a fight or flight, we're really going into survival, and the whole cascade of hormone actually puts the prefrontal cortex offline. It renders it unusable, or very close to unusable, so we do not have the willpower to go to the contrary of the impulse that we have to fight or to flight. This is actually really interesting. So those two behaviors, the fight or flight, avoidance, freeze, and the pause and plan, are really meant to address two different types of situations that are basically opposite from each other. And because they are basically opposite from each other, they have a impact on our body that is basically opposite. When I started to dive, I was really paying attention to my breathing, because first of all, when you're underwater and you have a tank on your back, you have a limited supply of air. So you need to use it in a way that is the most, clever, or that will empower you to stay underwater the longest time, like especially if you've been, diving in up north regions like Canada or whatever, like you have a lot of gear. So once you're in the water, you want to stay there as long as you can, possibly. And the other thing is, when we start to literally panic underwater, this is where we are putting ourselves in a situation very rapidly that would be causing harm to ourselves and causing harm to others. So the internal protection needs to be very much online so we can make sound decisions to really go in a situation, like from a situation that is not impulsive, that is not fight or flight, that is actually moving ourselves into like whatever training that we had, the willpower and everything that we need to put in place to make the decisions. And the link between the two, as I was saying, was like, if you're thinking about fight or flight, the breathing increases, and you're thinking about the pause and plan, the breathing slows down. Now, breathing is actually at the doorway of the two systems. The breathing is automatic. You don't have to think about your breathing, right? Like it's just happening. And there's even mechanisms, like if you're holding your breath long enough, then it will activate the fight or flight, or it will activate the decrease of your impulse to maintain holding your breath and trigger you to take a deep breath. So this is where it's interesting, because we can control the breathing, and we can shift from one state to the other. And I was explaining, like, that was based on my experience and really anchoring in, and that really allowed me to create a space within me where I could really anchor and shift that, and obviously, like I was practicing when I was underwater, but I that is when I started to really understand the power of the breath and the power of how, if we can't control anything else, controlling the breath will be the doorway to really find solutions and really like bring our gray matter to think of solutions in a soundest way. So I started to really incorporate that in my life, whether I was underwater diving or when I was like in everyday life. And, when you feel like your whole body is going into a fight or flight state, like, especially if it's not a real one, like you can use your breath. Like I used to have like a SOS button on my phone where like it was a 3-minute, like bring that down into really breathing slowly and deeply and oxygenate our body in spaciousness, not in contraction, in expansion, not in contraction, so we can really hone down on the emotional part of our being and really put our, I don't want to say our logical part, but our rational part, the part that allows us to make decisions not in a reactive way, but in a responsive way. And when I started to teach scuba diving, I was really, that's where it really dawned on me how much women are disconnected with their bodies, disconnected with their breathing. Most of the time they were there because, they were learning to scuba diving because it was a dream of their husband or their boyfriend, and they would have, gladly done something else, but they were talked into taking the scuba diving course. So most of the time when they were having more difficulties, they were ending up with me. And I really, I was the one instructor that all the other instructors were sending, people that had more difficulty in connecting and relaxing in their bodies and trusting the equipment and really shifting that relationship with the equipment, and also start to shift the relationship and the trust that they had in themselves, right? Because if you're always reacting from a survival state, it's pretty random, right? Like you're going to make stuff and you're going to react in ways that later on you're going to regret, not because it wasn't the right thing to do. You're going to regret, and I'm air quoting here, because it wasn't aligned with what you would have wanted for yourself or wanted for the others. This is not how you want to respond in your daily life. This is not how you want to build your life. This is not how you want to connect to others and yourself, right? So I was, and that's where I really understood that I was not just a scuba diving instructor. I was really coaching them in a place that was beyond the technical aspect of scuba diving. And later on in my scuba diving instructor career, I started to really teach, like my specialty became the rescue diver, CPR, and first aid, where I was teaching people how to take care of other people, but how to respond and not react in a situation that was emergency. So, when we're talking about hard skill and soft skill, that is one of the biggest soft skill that I have taught like for 20 years to everyone around me, like whether they were friends, family, in situations or life events, or whether they were my scuba diving students, or at higher levels in the rescue and the dive master, and also like when I was doing it naturopathy. Like I have, like, this is where I know that is tried, tested, and true. Now there is ample scientific studies to support this, but even if there wasn't, I know that this is a gold line, a gold thread, that if you are able to really practice that, to shift from one state to the other, you will be increasingly able to leave the survival chronic stress that you have been living in and start to really tap into possibilities, potentialities, where you can really make sound decisions that are really for yourself, that are really for the people around you, your community, your family, like, so everybody is taking into account in the most healthy way, starting by you, right? So that's the thing that I wanted to talk about. And the interesting thing, so the best, I've done so many different classes, but like, if you're not familiar with cardiac coherence, that is the quick fix, most easy to learn and rapid way to start to practice this in your life. So anytime that you feel that you are in that state, that you want to anchor in your breath, you actually inhale for 5 seconds and you exhale for 5 seconds, and you do that for 5 minutes. So 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale, and you do that for 5 minutes. You can start to train by doing it for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and so on. But the whole, science behind cardiac coherence is really powerful and will help you. And there's so many different tools over the years that I have worked with, developed, learned, taught, but this is the one that is the simplest to go. Now, one thing that I wanted to really talk about here is how poetic the heart is. Now, I was talking about the fact that when you're going into fight or flight, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your breathing goes up, like you want more oxygen, more energy in your bloodstream to really support that fight flight. When we are in that state, the heart rate variability is decreasing. So what's the heart rate variability as opposed to the heart rate? So the heart rate is the number of beats that you have per minute, right? And the heart rate variability is a measure that shows how much in between each of those beats there is a difference in time. Like to the extreme, that would be called arrhythmia. But we're not talking about arrhythmia right now. We're really talking about heart rate variability. And when we are in the fight or flight state, our body heart rate variability decreases. Now, when we are going into pause and plan, our heart rate goes down, our blood pressure stays the same, our breathing goes down, like we really cascade of hormones inside of our bodies to support the prefrontal cortex that would allow us to take sound decisions and tap into more willpower. But the heart rate variability increases in the pause and plan. And I think that when I read that, I actually thought it was the most poetic, because in life there's so many changes, there's so many cycles, there's so many different rhythms, there's so many different situations that will happen to us. And yes, there is a place in our lives where fight or flight, avoidance, freeze is, in extreme situation, the way to go. We have developed that for a reason, right? If I encounter a bear in the wood or a wild boar, or if I'm being attacked, there is a place for that. But on a day-to-day life, to be living in that state chips away a lot at our energy, at our sense of well-being, at our ability to create and be happy and cultivate joy, and to really be able to embrace change and all the variability in our life. And the heart knows that. It's like the heart knows. And when it is brought into this wonderful state that we are responding and not reacting, that we are bringing our prefrontal cortex online and tapping into more willpower and tapping into more alignment and making sound decisions, all the while our heart is saying that it's embracing this higher variability, and that's okay. That's what I had for you today. I hope that you have enjoyed how much I have enjoyed talking to you about this. If you have any questions, let me know. You can leave comments to this episode. You can reach to me on social media, and I always love to read your comments. And until we speak next time, I hope that you have a fantastic week, and I'm sending you so much love from a heart rate variability place. Thank you for being part of today's episode and walking with me. As the seasons of life shift, we hold the power to navigate our path with courage, intuition, and wisdom, and embrace change with an open heart, for within it lies the potential for remarkable growth and evolution. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe on your favorite platform, leave a heartfelt review, and share it on social media. If you know someone who would benefit from this episode, I'd be honored if you shared it with them. You can stay connected with
with me on social media, where I continue to share insights and inspiration. And for a deeper connection, you can join my Telegram community for exclusive content and real-time conversation. You'll find the link in the show notes. Until our next encounter, keep exploring, embracing change, and finding joy in every moment. And remember, you can always come back here and walk with me.